Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Randomly Relaxing. This is the first ever video on this channel. I'm your host. Usually I call myself ASMR Sports because that's the name of my original ASMR channel. I don't know what I'll call myself on this one. But when I figure that out, you'll be the first to know. I imagine most of the folks who are watching are actually people who've come over from my first channel, ASMR Sports, which is dedicated to sports cards and sports-related content. I have some ice cubes here because I really don't like my beverages to be super hot, and that means I'm going to have to cool this down if I'm going to drink it on this channel or on this video. In any event, a little bit about this channel for anybody who is maybe not familiar. The idea for this channel began when I was doing videos on my ASMR Sports channel, and it became clear that sometimes I wanted to delve into topics outside of sports and sports cards. And I didn't really feel like it was a great idea to do that on the channel that I had, because most of the people there were interested in sports primarily, although a good number of people have told me that they really don't care about sports cards, but they just like the channel for other reasons. So I wanted a place to go to be able to talk about things like politics and current events, and my other hobbies, collecting different things other than sports cards. I like to think a lot about investing and finance and stocks and cryptocurrency and just thinking about how one saves money, things like that. So this channel gives me a chance to do that. But another reason that I wanted to do this channel, and kind of speaks to the topic for today, which is sort of a political current events topic, was that in talking to people around me who I think are oftentimes less excited about discussing politics or kind of hot button issues of the day, it seemed like I needed an outlet to talk about these kinds of things without people who are in my everyday life who may not be interested in having those discussions. But at the same time, I watch a lot of YouTube, and like everybody, I get recommendations on things to watch, and oftentimes those recommendations, if you watch one particular video that's a political video, you'll get recommended similar content. And what that tends to mean is that people end up watching, I think, content that is geared really towards their current way of thinking. But in watching the content that was recommended to me, or that I sort of discovered in the way of political content, I just felt like a lot of stuff was, and I think I don't want to say to its credit, but, to the point of a lot of the people trying to make that content, the goal is to convince people of certain beliefs or to think like them. And, that's a noble, I think, effort a lot of times. But I also think that in this day and age of social media and, YouTube and other forms of like modern media and commentary and news reporting, I think that so many people and so many YouTube channels or media outlets or sources of information are all kind of invested in, convincing people to think like them. Sometimes very legitimately with kind of laying out the relevant information someone would need to believe a particular belief. But more often than not, I actually think just the style of the discussion and the like kind of goal of it is to, not necessarily belittle the other side, but to sort of diminish, I think, beliefs that aren't necessarily coming from fact, that the other side may hold. I'll try to be less completely vague if in the future, but basically, I guess what I'm saying is, I see a lot of content on YouTube that's like, watch this person own this other person. And I think, well, that's a type of cheerleading, that content. It's like, rah-rah, watch this person that you agree with, allegedly kind of, destroy this other person in a quote-unquote debate. And I watch some of those things, and I just think, well, if you believe what the, sort of person who's quote-unquote demolishing the other person, then, yeah, you probably, will agree that video was an example of somebody being demolished. But I don't really think, like, what's the value? What's the value in that? I guess to the extent it gives someone who already believes that, like, some additional information that may help them, have a deeper understanding of an issue, that's great. But I really don't think a lot of times that's what comes out of that. I think it's just someone's like, it's confirmation bias. It's like somebody just sort of hearing a lot of things that they don't really question because evidence is being trotted out that supports what they already believe, and they're not going to be very skeptical. So what I want to do in a very calm and relaxing manner, if possible, is, look at some of the kind of hot button political issues of the day and try at least to be objective and, appreciate my own biases, and, not really try to convince anybody of anything except myself. And what I really want to do is sort of demonstrate a way of, I guess, digesting content that, I think might be more helpful for people in terms of staying stress-free and coming to beliefs that, truly you believe, instead of ones that I think are sort of, shepherded or kind of created, for you by other people who have a vested interest in you believing those things. So maybe I'll fail completely, and what I actually fear will happen here. Take a drink of this tea. By the way, this tea is not one I've had before. Lemon ginger, pretty classic flavor. I don't know if you guys are tea drinkers. I tend to like kind of chai tea with some kind of creamer in it. I'm a non-dairy creamer kind of guy, but oh yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Very, very gingery, very lemony, as you would expect. So in any event, I hope to help some folks relax and maybe think about issues, or at least observe somebody learning about and thinking about issues in a way where it's not really like I'm trying to convince you of anything necessarily. I mean, be great. We all think it'd be great if other people believe like we believe. That's kind of what makes community. But I don't want to own anybody. I don't really want to see anybody allegedly owning anybody, because there's like a time and a place for debate. If anybody has sort of participated in debate, competitive debate, like in high school or college, you sort of, that drill, and that's great, but for the average person who's trying to understand like some issues in modern day society, I don't know that it's all that helpful, actually. So welcome to the channel. Thanks for coming by. Let's take a look at Kyle Rittenhouse. So the other day, a case was decided. There was a jury verdict in a case involving a young man named Kyle Rittenhouse. Most people have heard of this case, at least in the United States. It's one that's been very much in the news. A lot of people have been following the case. The trial for the case being held in Kenosha, Wisconsin, has been publicized on television quite broadly. A lot of places have been streaming it. A lot of people have been watching it, and a lot of news has been sort of commenting on what has been happening in that case as it's gone along. So I'll try not to go into too much or too little detail. Here's what I want to say about this case. Other than kind of being aware that it's in the news a lot, and that it is a very politically charged case for reasons I'll discuss. I haven't really dug into the trial in terms of watching the testimony that's gone on, or hearing the arguments, or reading the briefs. So I've been sort of intentionally kind of staying away from all of that, because I kind of wanted to get to the end and sort of look at it with a little bit of perspective, or not perspective, but sort of looking back on it, knowing how the outcome will turn out, and sort of think about what some of the people in different media circles have been saying about it, and thinking about what I think about those things objectively. So for those who are not maybe in the United States, or just haven't been paying attention, the Kyle Rittenhouse case, if I can describe it as kind of objectively as I'm able, involved a young man. I believe he's 18 years old now. I think he was under 18 at the time of the events, but Kyle Rittenhouse is a young man who attended a Black Lives Matter rally that happened in Wisconsin, and he went there with an AR-15 assault rifle, and I guess I'm not going to try to describe exactly what happened, but basically the result was that 3 people were shot by him at that rally. 2 of them died, and 1 of them survived. The survivor was, a witness, understandably, at the trial for Kyle Rittenhouse, but the issue at the trial was whether Kyle Rittenhouse was responsible for murder or some lesser crime, like manslaughter. And then there was originally a weapons charge that had to do with like possessing the weapon that he had in some manner that was unlawful. I think it had to do with like his age and or reasons for carrying that rifle. That ultimately was dismissed, so that did not reach the jury. But the end result was that the jury found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty on all the charges that remained, and the resulting verdict took I think 2.5 days to reach, so it wasn't a quick verdict. But in any event, I think the issue has been the trial has been politicized. I think because some on the left side of the political aisle believed this was a situation where young white man went into a protest that was to support the rights of Black Americans to be free from police violence and other forms of violence, and ended up killing what I think the general public believed to be participants in that protest, and killing not just 1 but 2, and injuring another. And so it was sort of this, well, here's a person who, this is a sort of paraphrasing what I think the kind of left-leaning views on this were, and still are really in some ways. The view was, here's somebody who disagreed with the Black Lives Matters protesters and proponents, somebody who was probably on the conservative side of the political spectrum, and he went to this protest carrying an assault rifle, sort of one might imagine looking for the opportunity to use that assault rifle, and multiple people were injured, 2 of them were killed, and the concern I think there is that this person is at the time possibly going to quote unquote get away with that. Now it seems he was acquitted, and so is not going to face any responsibility for the actions that he took. I think on the other side of the political spectrum, on the conservative side of things, people believed that this is a young man who went to this protest to help defend property that was owned by people or businesses in the area where the protests were happening. I think they believe that it is common at protests for violence to occur, primarily violence against property, people burning down buildings, breaking windows and things like that. They viewed Kyle Rittenhouse as somebody who was wanting to work against that happening, and he went to the protest to see if he could prevent that, armed with his lawfully owned weapon, and was attacked by multiple people, and lawfully used his weapon to defend his life. And I think the people, if I can speak, paraphrase for them, the people on the conservative side of the aisle, I think, believe that this is an attack, that this case, to prosecute Kyle Rittenhouse was an attack on the ability of people who may or may not have lawfully owned and carried weapons to defend, their life and their physical safety. So ultimately, this case, I think, turned into really just yet another battleground for kind of liberal versus conservative views. And I think that people from, and I've done a little bit of kind of looking on sites like Reddit. By the way, when I'm talking a lot like this, and I have this screen up, I don't know if it would be better for me to go back to this. Maybe it would be. You can at least look at something that's sort of live. I'll try both. You guys can comment. But I think that this the case for a lot of people kind of turned into a situation where they made a conclusion about the guilt or innocence of Kyle Rittenhouse, relatively early on. I mean, certainly well before the trial occurred, and there was information, there was evidence that was out there. There was a video of the events, but ended up being kind of not super helpful video because some of the key parts were only shot by a drone, and so it's like very hard to see the people on the ground. But in any event, I think a lot of people, as did I, right, when I heard about this situation where basically, two people had been killed at a rally by someone who I think was known then to be a, kind of conservative, sort of anti-BLM person. It felt very easy to imagine in one's mind what had happened, and I think the same is true for conservative folks who maybe were feeling very fed up about the results of rioting that's happened on the West Coast and in Minneapolis and other places in the past several years. And so they heard maybe just the very bare facts of the case and made a conclusion for themselves. The trial that just concluded, especially because it's been pretty much live streamed, the whole thing, gives one basically all the information that you could ever really have, because it's the job of the attorneys in that case to present any and all information that supports their side, and that really should include everything that's possible to be raised by by either side in defense of their position or support of their position. So I think as things came out of this case, some people started to say, well, gee whiz, I didn't know that particular fact. That kind of changes how I think about this. I mean, I'll be blunt and say that there was a point where one of the witnesses in the case, who was a witness for the prosecution, and this was the one man who was shot and survived, took the stand and ended up saying some things that really helped Kyle Rittenhouse's defense. And I think the reaction from a lot of people who believe that Kyle Rittenhouse was guilty was like, well, that's really bad. That's bad news. If one is hoping for a conviction here, but I think if one isn't also honest about the fact that, well, unless this witness was paid off or something, which I don't think there's any evidence to suggest, it is what it is, as they say. It's information that goes to the innocence of Kyle Rittenhouse, and I think that people on the left had a hard time. I think sort of figuring out where to go with that, as I think more evidence came out that was at least going to be very difficult for the prosecution to get around. And I think I saw a post by what's his name? Trevor Noah, is that it? From The Daily Show. This was circulating on Facebook, so I saw a couple people post it, but the meme, I don't know what you call it, it's like a photo with a quote of it, a photo of him with a quote of what he was saying. And basically he was saying, well, look, this is somebody who went into a situation that he knew was going to be, inflammatory, explosive. He went in there with a weapon, and he can't say that when bad things happen that he's got no responsibility for that. Is the net of it. I mean, I guess I could dig that up. You guys let me know if I'm a horrible person, because I didn't get the exact quote, because I could theoretically put that on the screen for you guys. But I think that was the kind of response to some of these bad facts, as we call them, as they came out in the trial. But I don't know. I think if you are a liberal, or if you are a conservative, I think you probably, and not necessarily completely because of your own doing, but just because of the media we consume and the sort of ways that our minds work. I mean, confirmation bias is a known psychological factor in all of our beliefs, and I think that one has to recognize that, and one has to understand what it means for how they consume news. And so if one can do that, instead of sort of just saying, well, I'm going to go round up all the things that support my position, whether consciously or unconsciously, I think one can have a much more rounded perspective on things, and I think that's better for them and for everybody else. So in any event, that's the sort of sum and substance of the Kyle Rittenhouse case. I wanted to find at least one piece of media on this. This comes from NPR, which I'll talk about probably in future episodes about what I think of NPR, but the title of this article is "Why the Kyle Rittenhouse Not Guilty Verdict is Not a Surprise to Legal Experts." And I thought, by the way, I'm almost done with my tea here, and I feel like that's a good time to end the video, but I'm going to get through this article. I have no idea how long the videos on this new channel are going to be, because usually I'm like opening a box of baseball cards or sports cards, and it's like however long it takes me to open that box is how long the video is, and that's generally 20 to 30 minutes, like every time. Sometimes I do some other things, but in this case, I don't know, maybe the average video will be an hour. But in any event, this article I think is a good one in sort of how it lays things out, and I wanted to just sort of go through it quickly with you all and kind of talk about the things I think are worth thinking about. But obviously, the gist based on the title of the article is that people, legal experts, people who are prosecutors or defense attorneys, who are familiar with this case, were not particularly surprised by what happened with the jury's decision. And, one broad theme related to my goal for this channel, at least to the extent I'm doing political things, is that, I feel in general a big problem with media and with people's consumption of media and with people's just attitudes about news and current events, and pretty much any kind of political belief, is that we have I think, unhealthy desire to listen to voices other than those that are experts. And that's not to say that somebody who is expert on a topic should be believed, completely on faith. Absolutely not. There are, plenty of crackpots who happen to be doctors or lawyers or scientists or sports athletes or entertainers or whatever, and they might be considered to be experts even in their fields in some regards, and they might think some things that are sort of really out there. But I feel like if we take experts as a whole, and I think in this case that's attorneys who are familiar with the criminal justice system, who have worked as prosecutors or defense attorneys or judges. Typically, if you're a judge, you've done one of those two things, but not always. So if we take the sort of voice of experts as in a particular topic as a whole, and we say, what's the consensus? And the consensus is quite clear and is quite broad. I think it's not. I would say as somebody who is not an expert on something, where that is true, that it means that you should have to sort of double or triple or quadruple the research and the care that you put into beliefs that you have around the issue. And oftentimes what people do instead is they just sort of go down the confirmation bias hole, and they sort of look for voices that agree with theirs, and maybe they find some quote-unquote experts on a topic that will support what they believe, which happens to be in the very small minority of what the other experts of the world think on that issue. And I just think that's suboptimal. I think if an expert is in the minority, and there are lots of things where I think experts are kind of 50-50 on an issue, right? And in that case, I think if you want to believe one group of experts versus the other, then you've got pretty good support. You've got at least half of the experts on that issue that support you. That's probably fine, even if you're just flipping a coin to get to your belief, or you're listening to whatever your media source is to get that belief. Probably not a whole lot of harm come from that. But when there are matters on which experts are 80 or 90% uniformly supportive of one position, and you as a layperson want to believe the opposite, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying you need to do more than to find the 20% of the experts who are telling you what you want to hear. You need to try and understand the issue at hand, and maybe you don't have to get a PhD in it, but you've got to read. You've got to look out for objective sources, as objective as you can find, and you've got to have, I think, an ability to appreciate what is an objective source. So I hope people do that. I haven't done that with many things that I believe, because nobody has done that for a lot of the things. But if we can strive to do that for as many of the things, many of the beliefs that we strongly hold, I think we'll all be better off. All right. Am I ever going to read this freaking article, you guys? Here we go. So this is an article. I found this sweet little app that lets me highlight things, which is fantastic. But I wanted to draw a few passages to your attention. This one is quoting a former defense attorney, former prosecutor from the Wisconsin area where this case was. She says, "I think that anyone who saw the evidence could see that the jury might have a difficult time coming to a unanimous decision that Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't defending himself." And that's Julius Kim is her name. So, or I guess that could be Julius Kim, a man or a woman. But we'll say it's Julius Caesar. It's a man. That's an important thing, I think, to remember in this case is that you have to have unanimity in a jury to convict somebody. So you have to get everybody in that jury, all 9 people. I think it's a 9-person jury in this case. Sometimes juries are bigger or smaller depending on where you're at, but you have to get all the people to believe basically that like a defense was not valid. And what the attorney here is saying is that the evidence was sufficiently cloudy that, yeah, maybe you get 5 people in that jury, maybe you get 6, maybe you get a strong majority, 7 or 8 people on that jury, believing that argument of self-defense that Kyle Rittenhouse said, and again, apologies if you know nothing about this case, but basically the case rested on largely on whether Kyle Rittenhouse had a defense of self-defense, and what that would mean is that he had I actually highlighted this down here, he had a reasonable belief that he was in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm. So, I think convincing 9 people that he did not have that belief under facts where, the video that's available is not so great, 2 of the witnesses are dead, not so great, and, there were witnesses, I gather, that were like sort of people that were there with Kyle Rittenhouse, and they did testify that there were facts that suggest that these people he had shot were attacking him, as did the one victim who was alive. He testified that was the bad witness that bad for the prosecution. He testified that he had pointed a weapon at Kyle Rittenhouse before he was shot. But in any event, so if you are, here's what I'll say. I think that Kyle Rittenhouse, never mind Kyle Rittenhouse, right? I think if somebody takes a weapon into a large public event, is doing things that are reckless and that are likely to invoke confrontation, that I think is a problem. And I think that in that case you would, maybe you wouldn't get murder charges, but I think you'd have a pretty easy time getting manslaughter charges or, reckless endangerment or some other kind of state law charges I've never heard of, but that exist to kind of prevent people from doing wacky things that lead to other people getting injured. I would hope that actually everybody, regardless of the political, where on the political spectrum they land, would agree with that. And I think that the issue for those who wanted Kyle Rittenhouse to be found guilty is that there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And remember, that's a fairly high standard that applies in criminal cases. That he didn't have that reasonable belief, or that sort of conversely, but the other side of that coin is that these people he shot weren't harassing him and doing things that made him feel endangered. One would like to think if there were evidence that these guys were running away, that they had no interaction with Kyle Rittenhouse, that, he chased after them. If there was evidence of those things, and I don't think there was, but, certainly if somebody has watched the trial and they can tell me there was evidence like that, and I'm, missing that, then great. But I will tell you, I'm open to hearing evidence like that, and I think, and I hope everybody is open to evidence that it goes against, whatever their sort of initial reaction to this case might be. But if you are open to the fact that there just wasn't that evidence there, and maybe there were people on the jury that said, boy, gee whiz, I think absolutely if somebody walks into a volatile situation, they've got a gun, maybe they're pointing at people and provoking them, absolutely that person should be guilty of one of the crimes that's been charged here. But I just don't see that evidence, right? I mean, that is, I think, an outcome that is reasonably fair. Now, we don't know what goes on in the jury room, although, jurors can speak publicly about their experiences, so we may know some of that eventually. And I think a lot of people might say, well, there was sufficient evidence in this case to make Kyle Rittenhouse, or to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of at least one of the charged crimes. But the people in the jury they were biased in some way, and they maybe felt like, well, their political beliefs are gonna kind of determine what they rule. That may be true, and there may be some I think society-wide evidence that defendants, of a certain political stripe, or of a particular skin color, or their ethnic background, or whatever kind of category you want to talk about, that those people receive negative bias from the population at whole, and therefore juries that are intended to represent the population. That issue is not, I think, going to be resolved in any way by what's happened in the Rittenhouse case. I think those issues are, in some ways, it's impossible to tell whether issues like that, whether you believe they're valid or not, impacted this case. They may well not have. They may well have. We don't have any information because, we don't know what happened in that jury room when they were deliberating. So, I mean, I guess you can say, well, okay, if you believe that, whatever, the average white person is racist, and there were, mostly white people in that jury, then that jury was racist. Well, maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but I don't think we know, for sure that the people on that jury were racist, other than, trying to extrapolate from some sort of society-wide statistic. But I think that in terms of the evidence that was available to the jury, the legal, as this article points out, the legal experts were not shocked by the outcome, and I think you have to try to understand why that is. In this article, you should read in full if you, if you really think, boy, Kyle Rittenhouse should have been found guilty based on what you know about the case. You should read this article and understand what people who are experts are saying. And I think, my sense, I haven't done a survey. I don't know if anybody has done a survey of sort of legal minds in general, but I think the consensus that I can sort of tell is that, yeah, people who are in the business of legal analysis and criminal defense and prosecution, I think jibe with what this article is saying, and because that's true, I think one has to really try to understand this if you want to, maintain a belief that Kyle Rittenhouse should have been found guilty. And I would encourage anybody, who finds themselves in that position to do that work. So, all right, I just want to kind of go through the rest of this really quickly. So here's where, this is the kind of Trevor Noah position. Kyle Rittenhouse came to Kenosha during a period of violent and destructive riots. He armed himself with an AR-15 style rifle, stayed there past curfew, and after being separated from his group, they emphasized that he was the only person there to shoot someone. So that's kind of the, I think the very high-level argument for why he should be guilty. Because if you take all these things into consideration, the argument goes, he doesn't have a reasonable belief that he is in danger. But I mean, circumstances can change very quickly, and so it's hard to extrapolate this to the situation where he's actually interacting with another person. I think that, again, the jury, you can believe they're biased, and you maybe have some good evidence for sort of why juries, particularly in particular, states or localities, tend to be biased against certain types of persons or certain types of classes of people. But ultimately, it's well within their purview to decide this issue of whether he had a reasonable belief that he was in danger. And I think, it's perfectly reasonable for someone to, look at what they want to about this case and say, no, I don't think that was, his belief that he was in danger was reasonable. I think he doesn't have that self-defense defense, and therefore he should be guilty. I think it's also, quite reasonable to believe the opposite. It's just really, that's why we have juries, because they get these hard questions and have to decide, facts. That's their job, is to decide facts, that if they decide one particular way, mean that there is a conviction. And, it's the system that we live in. Is it fair all the time? Absolutely not. Often it is going to lead to the, incorrect result. And, I think what you understand, if you have even a basic understanding of our criminal justice system, is that it's impossible to get it right all of the time. I don't know how often it gets it wrong. Maybe there's some studies out there, and, frankly, a lot of cases, if it gets it wrong, you'll never know about it. But there are things like, the Innocence Project, which is a nonprofit that looks at cases where people have been convicted of crimes that have evidence that modern technology might be able to shed new light on, and they will oftentimes be able to demonstrate that, like, DNA evidence, which did not, or DNA analysis, which did not exist for a lot of cases in the 60s and the 70s, can exculpate a convicted person. So, anyways, there are things, there are organizations like that are doing work to try to right some of the cases where things get wrong. But, if you really think about the criminal justice system, it's like we have a fairly decent one in this country compared to a lot of other countries. I once read a book actually about a classmate of mine who ended up being a journalist, and she was arrested in Iran, and where one of her parents was from. And, she was put in jail, and they gave her a trial, and, it's just like, it's a total, it's a travesty, right? They don't really, they're basically they just invent evidence, and they say, oh, well, you're an American, so you were, you were selling booze. That's what you were doing. And, it's like the person, doesn't have any alcohol whatsoever in their house, and it doesn't matter. Evidence doesn't matter. It's it's all just people in power want to put a person away because they think they might, write a bad article about your country. You're gone. Right? So we don't have that in this country for sure. But I do think that people who believe we have a anywhere near perfect justice system are, pretty sorely mistaken. And you might not ever have cause to really run into the problems with it. And that's great. That's great. But, until we reach enlightenment in the world and in this country, which, I don't think will ever happen, people are going to be accused of committing crimes, and their lives will hang in the balance of what a judge and what a jury does with that. And so we really want to make sure that we get it as close to perfect as we can, but it's never going to be perfect. And you just hope that you get it as right as much as humans are able to get it right. How much that is, I don't know. And even so, there will be cases where we get it wrong, and that's always going to be a travesty. All right, back to this article, just really quickly. Prosecutors said the two men had believed Rittenhouse was an active shooter and were trying to disarm him. So that was their response to the claim by Rittenhouse that, people were trying to take his gun from him. And I don't know. Both those things make sense to me. It's, if someone's, waltzing around with a assault rifle, how do you know he didn't just shoot people, around the corner? He's going to shoot more. Especially at a highly charged event. I guess, the prosecution did not convince that jury that was really what any of the men who Rittenhouse shot were believing, but that was the argument. And I think from Rittenhouse's perspective, people grabbing at your weapon seems like it could be maybe they're gonna use it against you. Anyways, there's just so much that I think one can't possibly, know about a situation unless one was there. And yet that is the job of the criminal justice system, is to help the jury try to understand what was going on at the time. And, there is a truth in there somewhere, but there's no objective way to get that truth. There's only sort of evidence and arguments. All right, this next one is they consistently emphasized Rittenhouse's stated intentions. This is the defense that night, acting as a medic and protecting private property and the threats to his safety. That's it's another sort of, I think, job of the jury to decide whether that intention is valid, whether that was actually his intention, or whether he went there to shoot people, because it, I think it bears on whether you believe his argument of self-defense. Why he went there. If you believe he went there to shoot people, you don't believe that he, felt he was in danger of bodily harm. You felt that he was shooting people because his intention was to shoot people. Again, that's the jury's call, and we know now how they came out on that. This next quote is, in Wisconsin, once a defendant has made a self-defense claim, prosecutors must then disprove it beyond reasonable. Yeah, so again, standard of proof here, as in all criminal cases, is quite high. So even if you have a majority or a strong majority of the jury that believes one thing, doesn't matter unless they all believe it. All right. Well, 12 jurors, I guess, is what they used in this case. I think maybe it's the most common thing for criminal trials. I think they might do smaller juries for civil trials. All right. But then he saw Rittenhouse adjusting his weapon. He testified. So this is the witness who was the guy who got shot, and this sort of part of the testimony was like news to everybody, and kind of was widely reported as a giant cluster F for the prosecution when this came out. That he was going to testify this. Generally, I think you would have a sense of what your witness is going to say, but maybe not everything. And that's why it's kind of exciting to see what happens at a trial, because you never quite know what a witness is going to say. And in this case, witness said something that was very problematic, I think, to the story that the prosecution was trying to present. So there you go. That's all I've got to say on Kyle Rittenhouse. What I fear is that people who are sort of inclined to, be very reactive, one way or another, are going to just say, everything you said is just, it's a bunch of crap. Kyle Rittenhouse is not guilty, never was, never a shred of evidence. Or, Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty as sin, and, the only reason he got off was because of malfeasance and, basically a rigged jury system, or rigged, criminal justice system. I hope that's not the conclusion from, this kind of discourse. I hope that it's like, well, I believed one thing. I learned a few things from this video. I don't necessarily believe the opposite, but I have a richer understanding. And if I really wanted to, I could go and, I could watch all of the video on the trial and get all of the evidence that was available to the jury, and I could, either validate the opinion I currently have, or I could reach a new view based on all that review. But I acknowledge that, I don't have all the information. I am not an expert. I should listen to what experts say unless I'm ready to do the research necessary to, invalidate what they say and, come up with good reasons, good, logical, valid, evidence-supported reasons why the experts I think are wrong, or maybe, 80% of the experts out there, they miss something. Can happen. Absolutely can happen. But, if you go and watch videos on YouTube that are just sort of like, here's why this decision sucks, and it's not really sort of giving you additional information, or it's giving you information but also kind of telling you what to do with it, I don't really think you're gonna kind of grow in your views on this. And by grow, I mean have a deeper and a richer understanding of what has happened and what might be done to change our society so that bad things that you justifiably think have happened will be less likely to happen in the future. So, if you are either a progressive or a conservative, I think, the best thing to do is to figure out what could be done to change an outcome that you think is, not a good one. And that's probably not listening to a choir tell you the things that you want to hear. But I'm sure some people will actually listen to this video and think that that's exactly what this is. I hope that's not true. But I actually sort of know it will be. I know people will respond based on my experience in videos on my other channel where I've ever talked anything political. People, I think, are just they're very reactive. And if you want to react to me, I would say, do it calmly, do it open-minded, do it so I can't really tell what side of the political spectrum you're on. so we can be, sort of genuinely curious together about a particular fact or a particular legal standard in this case, or anything that relates to it. But if you just try to sort of own me, I don't know. I just sort of think that you're not going to get anything from that, and I'm certainly not. So I hope you don't do that. All right. Well, thanks everybody. If you made it to the end of this, God bless America. You are a true champion. The point of these videos are ASMR videos, and they're to put people to sleep, so generally people will fall asleep before the end. Perhaps that's for the best. All right, well, thanks so much for playing along here, folks. This was just kind of a ramble, and I'd been putting this off for a while because actually I'm afraid that people are going to freak out and turn my comment section into a political flame war, which is the exact opposite of what I want to happen, but it probably will happen anyways. That's okay. I'm going to do lots of videos that aren't political, and those will be fun too. But if you're relaxed, then I'm a happy guy. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Looking forward to making more videos on this channel. If you like sports content, you're not already over on ASMR Sports, check that out too. That's an all-whisper, mostly gum-chewing channel that has to do with all sports stuff. So, thanks for watching. Catch y'all later. Bye now.